Hey y'all! Well, I know some of you are going to say, oh my god, no, Skunkie, don't go down that rabbit hole. Well, it's too late. Here we are with a reel-to-reel deck. And a couple of reasons that I decided to give this a try. One is, God, that just looks so freaking cool, right? I mean, what screams hi-fi more than a reel-to-reel deck? And I remember when I was a little kid, one of my friends, I think his dad was a doctor or something, obviously made a ton of money. He had like a super high-end audio room in their house that had a reel-to-reel deck. It was all like built into the wall with Macintosh stuff and everything. And it was like, yeah, that was something I've always lusted over. And I finally decided, hey, let me look into these and see how affordable or unaffordable these things are. So let me go into some of the research I did and why I picked this Akia GX4000D. And I know people are like, OMG, TX are the best, or you need a Sony, or you need some other brand. And I think every brand has good models and sketchy models and some that are hard to repair. What made me gravitate to this one is it's a very mechanical operation. It's got big knobs you turn. It doesn't have like push buttons that are operating solenoids. It's not auto reversing. It doesn't have, sensors that you put metal on the tape and it plays back the other way without having to move all that's cool features, but it's also things that can break. And I learned that when I bought a dishwasher. I bought this really fancy Maytag, I think it was, and it was a KitchenAid, and it was super nice. Paid a premium for it, and about 3 years after I owned it, the electronics puked, and it wouldn't work at all. And it turned out to get the electronic boards replaced that got fried was going to cost as much as a new dishwasher. So when I bought the next one, I bought the plastic tub with the mechanical timer knob on it, and 10 years later it's still working great. And so I've got old Kenmore washing machine. It's got the mechanical timer thing instead of the electronics. And so anyway, that's what really attracted me about this one. It's got a mechanical counter. It doesn't have like LED display or LCD display with electronic something counting the revolutions and all that. It's just got a belt or something going over. Turn the counter. Less likely to break, in my opinion. It's also got analog VU meters. Some of them have like LEDs. I like having these analog meters that light up too, which is really cool. I wish the counter had a light on it, but that's a small little gripe. The other thing that I like is this has a very basic speed control to switch between the low speed, which is 3 3/4, and the high speed, which is 7.5, which I'm going to be using 90% of the time. Is you just unscrew this little thing on this capstan, and which is what this little metal roller is called. That controls the tape speed. You unscrew this little knurled knob, this little sleeve comes off. It's got a little storage place behind this head cover that comes off, so you can get to the heads real easily to clean them, which is another nice feature. And it's all mechanical. The motor runs at one speed. There's no electronics changing the speed of the motor or something that can, screw up or vary and cause problems. It seemed like a very simple machine. It also has an auto shutoff that's all mechanical too. It's just got a little arm here that the tape goes under as part of the thread. The way you thread it through, you just wrap it under here, goes through this little wheel, goes under that little sensor, the little arm for the auto shutoff, and then up on the reel. And when you get to the end of the tape, it shuts off the motor so that the reels quit turning. The tape's not just sitting there flapping if you're in the other room. So that's a nice feature. And it's all mechanical. Again, it's easy to repair, adjust. It's probably just got a little switch in there. And the other thing is this deck does not have Dolby. You need to be careful. Some of these Dolby decks that were the later decks, the Dolby boards can puke in them. And if the Dolby board goes bad, they're basically going in a dumpster. I saw some videos about a guy trying to like bypass the Dolby board, and you think that would be pretty simple, but it was so heavily integrated into the circuitry that he basically just gave up. And so, again, simple when you're talking about a 50-year-old electronic device is probably the best. It's kind of like with turntables. You get these fully automatic turntables, you're just asking for it to be broken or break or have a problem, or get 20 little levers and stuff in there moving around. It's just, yeah. So anyway, let's talk about the different types of decks. There's two main types. There's these consumer decks that are like this, that use these 7-inch reels, and these are more compact. This is about the size of a footprint, kind of a turntable. And then there's the big 10.5-inch decks that have the reel adapters, and it's the super commercial looking ones. And those were either high-end consumer or professional decks. And the thing to be careful of, especially the commercial decks, or even some of those prosumer decks, especially the 2-track ones, is they were being used in a studio, and they got a ton of use. And they're much more likely to be just worn out than a consumer deck is going to be that may or may not have seen a lot of use. The pro decks, if they're used, you can almost guarantee if somebody spent 10 grand new for a pro quality deck, that they had it in use and it was in a broadcasting studio or something, and it's very likely the heads are worn out or it's got other issues. So that's another reason to stick with these little smaller decks. So the difference is 7-inch decks are almost exclusively 4-track machines. And that means that for stereo, you run the tape one way for 2 tracks, and then when you run it backwards, or you flip the reels over and run it the other directions, you run these 2 tracks. And so you can play, like have one album on one side, flip it over and play it on the other side. They come in 2 different lengths, and it's related to the thickness of the tape. There's 1 mil, 1.5 mil. The 1 mil tapes are in 1,800 feet on a reel, and then the thicker tape is 1,200 feet. And they used to make a really thin, like half mil tape that was 2,400 feet, but from what I read, they were real prone to breaking. They didn't sound as good as the thicker tape, and so I don't think anybody's manufacturing that stuff anymore. So you're either going to have 1,800 feet, it's 7.5 speed, which is, you buy this for the sound quality. We're not trying to like record a zillion minutes onto a tape. Like maybe back in the day, people were interested in recording like a church sermon or something on one, and they didn't really care about the sound quality. So you're going to be running these at 7.5 speed, and that means you'll get 45 minutes each direction on a tape, or 90 minutes for the whole thing. And if you get the thicker master tape, you get 30 minutes on each side, or 60 minutes. And so those are kind of the 2 options. And as far as buying tape, it came with a used Maxell UD tape, which is supposed to be really good tape. And most of this tape, again, has had something recorded on it, and you can just erase it and record over it. And I don't believe that has a huge impact on the sound quality as long as it hasn't been done a bunch of times, is kind of my understanding. And then got this off Amazon, this RTR tape that is the 1,800 foot roll. There's another company, and I think they're ATR up in North America, that is manufacturing tape, and I've got a couple of reels of that coming. And we'll do some comparisons in another video. And speaking of reels, these are the metal reels, and they're not common. These are what the tape usually comes on, these plastic reels. And functionally, these are identical to those. And in some ways, some of these are easier to thread, but they just don't look as cool. And like I said earlier, one of the things that drew me to even wanting one of these was the appearance and how cool they look. And to me, they look way cooler with these aluminum reels on it than they do with these. And I got these off Amazon. They were 25 bucks a piece. Some of the comments said they were wobbly or they didn't fit good. On the Skunkie deck, they fit great. They don't wobble. I didn't have any issues. I don't know if some other decks, the little spindle things are a little different and so they don't fit as tight, or maybe the person didn't know what they were doing. I had no idea, but these work fine. I do have some new old stock Scotch metal reels coming that I found on eBay for about the same price, so we'll compare the quality of those in the next video. But yeah, I just like the way they look with these metal reels. So we've talked about 4-track on 7-inch reels. The 10.5-inch reels, the reason that you would go to one of those decks is they have 7.5 and 15 speed. And so when you run the tape faster, it's going to sound better. And so that's why you would go to those bigger reels. And you would basically, you could run it at 7.5 speed, which should sound the same as this, and have more tape and get more time on it. But if I was going to spend basically double the money to get a 10.5 deck, that they're basically twice what these are, is to run it at 15 IPS and then get the better sound quality. The other issue though, when you're running it at 15 IPS, you're running the tape across the heads faster, you're running more feet across the tape to get the same, duration of play, and so it's going to put more wear on the heads. And so I've seen a lot of these 10.5-inch decks that when they show close-ups of the head, there's a lot of wear on them. And I think it's from running more tape at a faster speed across the heads. So maybe more likely to find a 7-inch deck that has better conditioned heads than the big decks. Just a thought when I was thinking about this through on all of this stuff. Also, this Akia deck, which is a GX4000D, and they made one of these that was a Dolby that was a different number. Don't get one of those. And I'm not trying to sell you on this specific deck. I mean, I'm sure there's a TAC, there's some other things that are as good or better or whatever, but just kind of explain why I chose this specific unit and searched for it. It's got glass heads, and there's like some sort of a coating, a ferrite, something, glass coating over the surface that the tapes run, and they don't wear like a normal metal head does. And so it should last longer and have less issues. Now, supposedly you can get some kind of micro cracking in the head that makes the surface rough, that can, tear up the tape over time. I don't know about all that. They said you need a microscope to see it, and I don't have a microscope, so these heads look good. And yeah, I felt like that was kind of a plus. So the other thing I want to talk about is where to buy one of these if you're interested. And in a minute, I'll tell you what I paid for this, and I can promise you, I'll bet $100 that somebody in the comments is going to say something along the lines of, "Oh, I found one of those in a yard sale, new in the box, in better condition than that, for $12. And I don't know why people feel the need to do that. And I'm not one of those people that enjoys driving all over the city, going from yard sale to yard sale to yard sale, or estate sale to estate sale, hoping that after 6 months of spending 15 hours every weekend that I run across some deal. And I know there's people that love that, and it's like gambling. They get this big rush from finding something dirt cheap at a yard sale, but that's just not what I do. And that's not how I spend my time. I spend too much time making video content to show you guys. So the guy that I got this from on eBay, that's basically what he does, is he cruises around thrift stores and estate sales and stuff looking for tape decks. And then when he finds one, he brings it home, puts new belts on it, cleans the heads up, services it up, make sure that all the functions work, or if things don't work, he notes it in the thing. And even said, some of them need repairs that he's not able to do, and so he's got a repair shop that he takes them to and gets that stuff fixed before he puts them on eBay for sale. And I'll put his eBay store below. He's got regularly has tape decks up for sale, and I feel like that's a trusted source to buy a used deck from that's been serviced and checked out, which I would recommend doing. If you buy one of these that says, untested or as is or parts only, that's probably what it is. That somebody plugged it in, they hit play, nothing happened, and so, hey, you may get lucky and they didn't know to thread the tape through the auto shutoff and the deck works perfect. But again, that's just rolling the dice and hoping that you're going to win. And most of the time you don't. So anyway, I paid, I think $550, something like that, for this deck, which is about what these 7.5-inch decks, the good ones serviced up, sell for. And the 10.5-inch decks start at $1,100-1,200 and go up to $1,500, and you get into the pro models that have been serviced, and you may spend $3,000 or $4,000. So yeah, if you're interested in getting one of these, check out that guy's eBay page. And I think he's got a couple of 10.5-inch decks. I think this was the only 7-inch deck he had, but went over and picked it up locally. He lives over in Woodstock, Georgia. So if you're local to the Atlanta metro area, you could go pick it up and save the $125 shipping, and then you don't have to worry about it getting damaged. And that's the other thing with somebody that doesn't know anything about these decks and has picked one up, found one at a thrift store or something and put it on eBay, and you buy it from them. If they don't know how to box it up and how to make sure that like these spindles are protected, because man, they're just like pencil lead thick metal that makes up the inside of these spindles. They get bent so easy, and then the deck's junk. And so make sure that whoever you're buying it from knows how to package it or box it up so it doesn't get destroyed in shipping. So the last thing I want to talk about is the top end, like the prosumer and the pro level decks that are the 10.5. A lot of those are what they call a 2-track or half-track deck. And instead of having 4 channels with them overleaved like this, it's just got 2 tracks. The tape plays in one direction, and then you rewind it, and it uses half of the tape with a little boundary between them, so that you get more tape area that's being recorded on. And then like some of the pro decks are half-inch decks instead of quarter-inch tape, which are 4-track decks. That's a whole different deal. So we're not going to get into those. Those are real expensive. But they did make consumer type, top-end consumer 2-track decks. And that's what the hype you're hearing about these, $1,000 pre-recorded tapes that sound like, God's hand was on the music. Those are 2-track decks. And like I said, looks like the pre-recorded tapes for those are selling for anywhere from $600-700 to $1,000 a copy. So that's way outside of my interest of buying music. But hey, if you got more money than God, yeah, why not, right? Anyway, those 2-track decks are, they're expensive, and then the other problem is a lot of them were used either in broadcasting or in a studio, and they're just flat worn out. The heads have huge grooves in them. Some of them may or may not even be able to be like lapped out and fixed, or they may need new heads, and then you get into replacing the heads. You're doing this whole weird alignment process that's like next level from aligning a cartridge on a turntable. I mean, that's something you need to send to a pro. You're going to spend hundreds of dollars getting the heads replaced. And so be warned that unless you just happen to run across a 2-track deck that was used in a home environment that, somebody with a lot of money bought and then never used it much, it's probably going to be worn out. And that's why you see some of these 2-track decks for $400 or $500, parts only or whatever, they're just worn the F out. And the ones that are serviceable, those decks start at like, most of them I've seen are like 1500 and up. And any of the ones that are below that have got pretty serious issues. And realize that these decks are so old, many of these companies are no longer in business. There's no parts available for these things. And so like if the capstan roller or something's all chewed up, you're going to have to find another machine that isn't worn out, which, or maybe, you know, there's a 4-track deck that uses the same roller that you can get off of it that maybe wasn't as used as heavily. So just be warned of that. And the other thing that I've seen people warning about is the so-called master tapes. Now, the original master tapes were done on 10.5 inch on a 2-track deck, or a half-track deck, as they sometimes call them. And those were legit. There was a while people were selling, you know, Led Zeppelin may have had some, you know, master dubs of, you know, like the Led Zeppelin 2 or whatever that were sold on eBay when somebody got them and didn't know what to do with them or inherited them or whatever may have happened. And supposedly those kind of tapes do sound freaking amazing because you're not going to get any closer to the source than a master tape. And when you see like these MoFi CDs and stuff that were recorded off the master tape or dubbed, you know, EQ'd or remastered from the master tapes, that's what they're talking about. It's a 10.5 inch 2-track master tape. Be warned that there's a lot of fake of those out on the internet. People are like, you know, getting a 2-track deck and they're recording, you know, Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon off of a CD onto a 2-track 10.5 inch tape and then putting a, you know, storage copy Dark Side of the Moon label on it and selling them for $700, and it's basically a CD on tape. So that's another thing to be warned about, is there's very likely few legit master tapes being sold like on eBay and stuff. A lot of those are just fake copies that people are scamming you on. So finally, what am I going to do with this? And what, you know, as far as like using it in my system? Well, my idea is that I've got some music that I love, like Eva Cassidy, this Nightbird box set, just beautiful music. If you haven't heard this, definitely check this out. This box set's all on 45s. They sound awesome. The problem is, if I'm going to lay down and listen to some music, I don't want to have to get up every 2 or 3 songs to flip the album over, no matter how good it sounds. And I understand people saying, oh yeah, it's on a 45, I don't want it, I'm not interested in that. And I understand that now. So my idea is to go through this box set and find the songs that I really love. And then put it on my turntable with a moving coil cartridge, going through the step-up transformer, going through my tube phono stage directly into this, and then recording basically a mixtape on a really high quality recording deck, and then play 45 minutes of music uninterrupted. And we've already got over 20 minutes. I was going to get into like recording on this. I think that's for another video, and maybe do kind of a reel-to-reel user 101, especially after I get a little more experience recording on the deck. I will say that it sounds really good. And in some ways, from the tape compression or saturation or something that's going on with going from the 45 vinyl to this, that it's a little less fatiguing, if that makes sense. That some of the highs are kind of compressed, where there's little, every once in a while, little sharp things that go up, just oof, that those get kind of rounded off, and the detail's still there. It's just a really nice sound. And we'll save all that for another video. So, hope you've enjoyed this first little segue into this new rabbit hole. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters. Thanks to you folks that make donations at my site. Thanks to all you subscribers and regular viewers. I hope you're going to enjoy some of this reel-to-reel content, and maybe you'll find a use for it yourself, like I have. And I think it's a neat thing to add to a hi-fi system. So, till the next video, have a nice day.